American Top Team in South Florida, Coconut Creek. We've got a big fight coming up, UFC 197, Jones versus St. Preux. It's going to be Saturday, April 23rd at the MGM Grand Garden Arena in Las Vegas. You can watch it on pay-per-view, or if you're in Vegas, you can get your tickets. And listen, if you can't get your tickets, okay, because I got a ticket right here. I've got the big ticket. Walt Harris for you. He's going to be fighting Cody East at UFC 197. Walt, what does this fight mean to you, getting to fight Cody East at UFC 197?
It means everything, man. It's biggest opportunity, biggest fight of my career. I look at every fight, you know, it's the biggest fight of my career, but this is definitely the biggest fight, a must win for me. So I'm prepared, man. I've been training for 8 weeks, 9 weeks for this, so I'll be ready.
How did you get this opportunity?
I fought Saul Pelele last November, got injured right after that fight, got injured in that fight a little bit, and had some time off. The UFC offered me a couple other fights that fell through, and then this fight came up, I jumped on it. We were supposed to be on the McGregor and McGregor and Dos Anjos card, and it got moved back to this card, so I told them I'd take it whenever they were ready, I'll be ready. So,
Walt, you're about 6'5", 250, so big ticket, you're a big guy. What is it like for you training, and how do you work on your cardio as a bigger guy?
I try to honestly treat it like I did basketball. A lot of sprints, a lot of running, a lot of road work, and then a lot of power and explosive training with my strength coach, Everton. And then just try to implement some of the things the smaller guys do, because I fight, I'm a rhythm fighter, so I try to mimic the smaller guys and push the pace a little bit in training, and it helps me with my cardio a lot.
Walt, you came up with an athletic background. You're from Birmingham, Alabama. Tell us about some of the sports you played as a youth, and then you really excelled in basketball. But talk about your youth and sports you played.
As a kid, I played everything. I played football, baseball, basketball. Never really got into soccer, but those were my 3 favorite sports. I played all of those up until about the 8th grade, and then I really honed in on basketball because I saw I had a lot of talent and a lot of ability in that sport. And my mother told me one day, she was like, "Son, I need you to get a scholarship," you know, and that's when I was like, all right, let me focus in. And basketball is what it was, so I ran with it.
In high school, how good were you? How good were your teams that you played for? And where did you play your high school?
I played at Homewood High School. We actually just won a state championship this year. Congratulations, boys. We were really good. We made it to, I think, 1 game before state. We ended up losing. Played with some really good players, guys who I'm still friends with to this day, grew up with. Jamie Gardner, David Ivey, some of my boys. We were really good. I was pretty good in high school. I was all-state honorable mention. Should have been all-state, but you know, hey, it is what it is. Ended up going to Jacksonville State playing college ball, junior college at Chipola up in North Florida. So yeah, that was about it.
When you're going from high school, then junior college, and then went to Jacksonville State University, how were you progressing as a basketball player and as a student?
Man, as a student, it was not a hard transition because Homewood is one of the best schools in the country. But athletically, it was tough, man. It was hard because I was used to being the dominant force on the court. Then you go and you're playing with guys who've been playing, you know, a year or 2 more than you in college, and they're stronger, faster, bigger. So it was definitely a transition for me, but I went through it, made it through it, and stuck it out, and did pretty well.
And academically?
Academically, I ended up getting a physical education degree, a partial degree in business, which I'm still working on right now.
That's awesome. For 2 degrees then, so you're taking advantage of that. That
yes,
is
sir.
really good. How important was education, not only to you, but to your mom and your family?
Very, very important. I didn't really get the full ramifications of it while I was going through it, but then, you know, my mom would always yell at me, and you need to get this, fall back plan, and it started to sink in a little bit, you know, and it's a very, very important thing in my family, very important.
What does mom think about you fighting MMA?
Oh man, she loves it. She's always on the road with me, traveling, going to fights. At first, honestly, she didn't like it. I mean, she was kind of like, "What are you doing?" You know, kind of confused.
Well, here you are, a basketball player. You've got a college degree. You could work
Not
that
to
too.
mention, my whole family played basketball, so it was almost like, "What are you doing? You're going against the grain," you know. And she loves it now. She's my biggest fan. She helps me a lot business-wise off the court. So you know, she's one of my biggest fans. I love you, Mom.
NBA tryouts. talk about having a couple of NBA tryouts, because after college, then you decided, hey, I still want to play basketball. Let's see
Yeah,
what's
that
going
was
on.
NBA was always my dream. For me as a kid, honestly, it was NBA or bust. I mean, you couldn't tell me as a kid that I wouldn't play in the NBA. You know, I mean, I played ball every day, worked out every day.
So even like summertime, you'd be playing.
That's it. Travel
wherever,
ball
wherever.
everywhere. I was everywhere, and it was just one of those things that I thought was gonna happen. And I had a couple of tryouts, a couple things, you know, fell through. Couple of negative situations I won't go into, but it was a bad time in my life. I actually, you know, took 2 years off after that because I was just depressed. You know, I just lost the only thing that I ever cared about. You know, and you know, that's kind of how I got into fighting. You know, I transitioned into fighting. I took those 2 years off. I had a kid, my 9-year-old son Asa, and I gained a ton of weight. You know, I was doing the daddy thing. You know, and I got up to like almost 295, I think. And I started back training, just working out, running, and an elderly lady came up to me in a gym one day.
Where was this at?
This was in Birmingham, in Vestavia at Gold's Gym. She came up to me one day, I was sitting on the weight bench, I'll never forget it, and she goes, have you ever fought? And I was like, yeah, growing up, you know, like in the neighborhood, whatever. She's like, no, I mean for money. And I was like, no ma'am. She was like, well, let me introduce you to someone. She introduced me to my coach, John Dye, and I started taking classes on Saturdays. We literally used to train in a racquetball room. And I mean, I fell in love with it. I was getting so much better, and he had me do some amateur boxing matches and things like that. And then he came up to me one day and he goes, hey man, you want to take a cage fight? And I thought he was joking. I was like, man, whatever, dude. Like, he's like, no, I'm serious. I was like, no, I'll do a fight with headgear and big gloves. He's like, no, let's do a cage fight. So I'm like, man, whatever, let's do it, you know. And I took the fight. I ended up fighting one of his old teammates, and I knocked him out in I think 40 seconds, and like shattered his jaw or something. And he was going nuts. He's like, dude, you can make money doing this. You can go to UFC. And I never really envisioned the UFC. I was just like doing it because it seemed, you know, fun, you know. And I just kept doing it, kept winning, and here I am.
When was it though that you actually got to UFC? And there had to be something, I'm guessing there had to be something, an opportunity or something happened that opened the door to UFC.
Yeah, I was actually 23 and 1 as an amateur, and you know, people started yelling it then, UFC, and I was like, whatever. And then I turned pro, and then I went like 4-0 as a pro, and my biggest fight before that was like a guy named, forget.
That's okay.
But I went out to Vegas to fight, and I fought for SEC, and I ended up fighting Anthony Hamilton. He's actually in the UFC now. I fought him for SEC. I ended up winning that fight really quickly, dramatic fashion, and then people started really saying UFC, you know, and I was like, okay, maybe I can really do it, because he was really good. He was like 13 and 1 at the time, and so I started kind of believing it then, and then, you know, a year went by, I couldn't get any fights, guys wouldn't fight me outside the UFC, and then the UFC called, and I was like, man, please, you know, be serious, you know, and my manager's like, yeah, it's real, like, here's the contract, I'm sending it over, and then there it was, man, I was signed with the UFC.
What did mom say when that happened?
Oh, she went nuts. She was so happy. She was like probably happier than I was, honestly. Like she was going nuts.
Walt, when you were in transitioning from NBA tryouts, and then you had a son, you were raising a son, and you also were a little depressed because you weren't able to do your NBA dream. That had ended for you, so that was hard to let go, but you ended up letting go. Was there something that said, okay, I gotta let go, let me move on and do something else? Yeah,
it was fighting. I mean, martial arts is, man, I've grown up a ton. You know, it's cliche as it sounds, like everybody talks about martial arts, discipline, and like it's a fact, man. Like it changed my life for the better, it changed my family's life. I've met so many great people, you know, from the martial arts, and I definitely believe that was what made me realize, you know, hey, it's time to move on, time to go on to a new dream. You can have success in this if you put your focus into it like you did basketball. And that's what I did, man. I accomplished my dream of getting to the UFC. You know, still trying to get that first win. You know, that's my next goal. So, you know, I put my mind to it, got it done. Now it's time to go get that win.
You worked for UPS. Mm-hmm. You were a furniture mover.
Yeah.
So this wasn't like, hey, I'm here, just give me everything, give me everything.
I had to work for everything. I I had to work for everything, man. It was a difficult transition in the sense of fighting and having to train and having to lift furniture, and then it was tough for a while. But then as the UFC dream began to come more real, I had to let that go and start focusing completely on training. And that's when I moved down to Top Team and started coming here to train and getting into the actual fighter lifestyle, like taking this as a job, and not doing it on the side.
How did you get to Top Team, American Top Team,
Man,
Coconut Creek, South Florida?
My first loss as a professional, I met Dean Thomas, and I was heartbroken after the loss. I was in the locker room, I was in tears, and Dean so happened to be cornering a guy who was fighting on the same card. He was in the locker room, and he came up to me. He was like, man, you got a lot of talent. He was like, where do you train at? And I'm like, I train in Alabama. He's like, you need to, come get some good training, like with some guys your weight, your size, push you to the next level. And he offered me an opportunity to come down. They flew me down here for 2 weeks, and the rest is history, man. I had a couple other visits set up to go to AKA and go to Black Zillions. I came here and I was like, that's it. I'm done. I don't need to go see anything else. I want to be here. So.
You're coming from a basketball background, a sports background. You've played other sports. Team. Mm-hmm. And yes, American Top Team is a team, but once you're in that octagon, in that cage, it's one-on-one. How much of an adjustment was that for you, going from a team sport to now an individual sport?
It wasn't honestly that big of an adjustment, because in life I'm a team guy. Like I'm always trying to help my teammates, and I look at this as you're only as good as your team. You know what I mean? And if I don't have good training partners, or if I don't have guys pushing me every day, staying on my back, keeping me focused, then I can't succeed on fight night when I'm in there by myself. So team is huge. And at American Top Team, it's more than team. We're a family. It's a brotherhood for sure. So that in itself it was.
So that team element is still there for you.
It's definitely still there. It's a huge part. We just like we hang out outside of the gym. We go to the beach. We do stuff together. It's a brotherhood. So it's huge.
How did you get the nickname the Big Ticket?
Oh man, I used to be called the Assassin. And one day my mom came over, and we sat down and we looked on a database. And there was literally, I kid you not, 450 guys called the Assassin. So my mom goes, well, I had a dream that you would be a big draw. And I was like, wow, okay. And she goes, but I see you selling out a lot of arenas. And I'm like, okay, what about Big Ticket? Then I thought about Kevin Garnett, and I'm like, oh, he's already got it. She goes, well, nobody has it in fighting. And I'm like, And I go, well, I don't think Kevin Garnett will fight me for it either. So I kind of ran with it. I hadn't heard anything from Kevin Garnett. Hopefully, if you see this, Kevin, hit me up on Twitter, something, let me know you approve. I'm a big fan. But, so yeah, that was kind of how that came about. My mom was like, Big Ticket. I ran with it, and it stuck, and everybody likes it, and, kind of ran with it.
Being from Birmingham, for basketball then, who were some of your sports idols growing up?
Man, Charles Barkley for sure. My favorite basketball player of all time. Jordan, of course. He lived in Birmingham. Got a crazy story about him. I don't know if we got time for it, but...
sure we do.
Okay, so when he played for the Barons...
He was playing baseball, that's right. He was playing
baseball.
minor league baseball with the Chicago White Sox organization.
And he got sent down to the Birmingham Barons. Well, my mother, she was a supervisor at the Meadowbrook Post Office, and she used to get his mail. And so every weekend on Saturdays, I would go to her office to try to catch him, because he would never come in during regular hours. He would come in after it was closed to get his mail. So my mom was like, come to work with me and you can see him. So for like 3 months straight, I went every Saturday. I kid you not. I would sit, and I was like 10 years old. I sit up there, and I'm just like, Mom, he's never gonna come. She's like, I promise he'll come one day. So one Saturday we leave, we go across the street to get gas at the BP, and I'm heartbroken. I'm just like, I want to cry, I quit. I'm sitting in the front, and my mom like taps me. She goes, look who's in front of us. And I look up, and it's Michael Jordan pumping his gas, and I'm just like, I'm starstruck. My mom's like, get out, go talk to him. And so I kind of get out all nervous, and like all these kids are kind of going up to him, trying to shake his hand. And I'm just like shaking, and I'm like, hey, Mr. Jordan, and he kind of shakes me off, and it broke my heart. Like I went in the car and I just started crying. My mom, she looks, she goes, what happened? Did you get his autograph? I'm like, no, ma'am, he said no. And she got out of the car and she called him by his full name. She goes, Michael Jeffrey Jordan? you shake my son off, I'll keep this office open for you to keep your mail. And he looked and he saw I was hurt and he's like, oh, I'm sorry, Miss Harris. And he kind of waved and he's like, I'll get him something, I'll send him something to the office. He gets in his car and he leaves. I'm just devastated. So I go home and the next weekend, I'm at home, my mom calls and she goes, I got somebody wants to talk to you. I'm thinking it's Michael Jordan, but it was Charles Barkley. And they were having lunch at Lloyd's, and he's on the phone. He's like, I heard. And him and Michael were really cool. He goes, I heard what that ball had, it did to you. And I'm like, oh, this is Charles Barkley. I'm going nuts. He signed the receipt he ate dinner with, sent it home by my mom. I still have that actually, and one of the biggest moments of my life. So I became a huge Charles Barkley fan. Started buying jerseys and shoes, everything. So that was my story for Michael Jordan and Charles Barkley.
Of course we have time for that story. That's a great
awesome.
story.
It's one of the highlights of my life, for sure.
Fans, Walt Harris, The Big Ticket. If they want to find you on social media, where do you have fans go?
Facebook me. I have a fan page, Walt Big Ticket Harris. I think my regular page is full. I think I'm at 5,000. But follow me on my fan page. Twitter, The Big Ticket 205. Instagram, The Big Ticket 205. And I try to talk to everybody. I try to, socialize with everybody. So hit me up, man. I'm always around.
The Big Ticket, Walt Harris. He's a basketball player. Now he's an MMA fighter, fighting for UFC. Big time, Big Ticket. He also is a college graduate. So there you go. He'll be fighting Cody East, UFC 197, Saturday, April 23rd, MGM Grand Garden Arena, Jones versus St. Preux. You got to check it out. Thank you, Walt.
Thank you.